it's like 50-50 Corona Olympics news, and really most of the other news is cops committing crimes. Again, thematically, over the last few weeks, there's been a cop story every week. And I think I've realized that, yeah, this is it. We just hit themes. And I should try to, expand upon, embellish those themes more, but we'll worry about that later. The first one is Olympic news. It's only vaguely touching on coronavirus, which I'm quite happy about. The Olympic Village is relatively famous for knocking boots. Ninja News Japan does a lot of knocking boots stories, but you get people in peak physical condition, perfect bodies, testosterone and estrogen just flowing freely about, and a lot of them are very attractive, and those kind of peak level athletes are going to be attracted quite often to other peak level athletes. The babies the Olympic Village could produce are amazing. If you think about it, like you get a gymnast and a power lifter and end up with a powerlifting gymnast baby, amazing stuff. But a lot of those athletes actually are there for a very short time. They don't want to be bogged down with babies and passing on their exquisite genes, which I think is a disappointment. So there are a lot of condoms used. And again, the number, they'll report on it. It was back in the 80s they started providing condoms for them because they didn't want, like a sexually transmitted disease. And who knows how often like these people trade partners and stuff. But in the Olympic Village this year, companies had set to provide 150,000 condoms to be provided to Olympic athletes by Japanese companies. And then they turned around and said, but because of the corona restrictions, we don't want you coming into contact with each other. And you can't, if you do social distancing, you can't stay 6 feet apart and engage in employing the condom correctly. There was a nice way to say it. So the statement, though, was our intent and goal is not for athletes to use the condoms at Olympic Village, but to help with awareness by taking them back to their countries. I was wondering if these were particularly branded, if they had like the Japanese flag on them or something, but I don't think they do. I think they're just normal companies. They're Japanese companies, so maybe when they return to their countries and then employ them in usage, they could turn around and say, oh yeah, these are particularly good or particularly bad. I don't know. That actually wouldn't maybe go the way they want it to. The goal for now is to not use the condoms, to take the condoms back. Now, there was an interesting thing, side note, because I found out during my single days in Japan that you cannot import condoms, which I tried to do. I tried to on an online pharmacy or something, I tried to buy a brand that I knew and have it brought to Japan. And I figured I'll get, bulk, so I don't have to do this more than once. It's relatively embarrassing if you have to like fill out a customs form and stuff. So I tried to get a big box, like 25 or 50 or 100 or something. I don't remember. And I remember it getting held up at customs. And then them saying to me, you can come down and pick like 5 condoms out of this box of 25 or 50 or whatever it was. There was a limit as to how many you could bring into the country, really. But I would have to go down to customs, go to the guy and be like, hey, I would like to get that box, and pick my 5 condoms out of the box and then take them home. And if you want embarrassing, buying condoms, if you're socially conscious of it, is embarrassing when you do it at the pharmacy. Going down to customs agents and then getting it from them is somehow worse, and also a much bigger trip. So I didn't do any of that. I just said, I don't know, dispose of them. I don't know what they're going to do with them. They're not going to send them back. So basically, I just lost money on that. So these 150,000 condoms for the Olympic Village, they're saying they need them taken back to their own countries, but have they taken into account whether or not they're allowed to take them back to their own countries? Complete side issue to the story, but something I found interesting anyways, because I got in trouble for that. Recently, I went on Amazon and I wanted to smell better. So I found, the hard cologne. So it's for travel. It's not like a spray or anything. It's like a wax. You have it in a tin and you wipe it. I've actually never used it, so I don't know if you use your fingers or whatever. You just like rub the case on your face. That's irrelevant. So it said ship to Japan. You'll get it by next week. So I clicked the button on American Amazon and it shipped it to Japan. And then I started getting messages that it was being held up, that there was a problem. And then every time I tried to find out what the problem is, they wouldn't tell me. And it turns out you're not allowed to import that to Japan, which is really weird, because it was one of those things. Why is Amazon Japan turning around and saying you can import this to Japan, but then you can't import it to Japan? So it was just, I don't think I lost my money. I actually have to check whether I got my money back. Basically, it sat in customs. There were a whole bunch of emails that went around, and then it got sent back, which seems like a huge waste of money. If I get my full refund, which I'm pretty sure I will, that actually means that someone paid to have a package shipped to Japan and then returned for no benefit. So someone just ate that cost, which is awful. I guess Amazon can afford it. I shouldn't really feel bad. But I don't even think it was Amazon. I think it was an Amazon seller, so it might be that company. It just seems silly. It would have been easier to tell me you can't import it to Japan than say I can and then go through this whole process. So it has been clarified as to who can attend the Olympics as a spectator. So the athletes are all going to get vaccinated, whatnot. We've kind of been over that. Whether it's fair or not is a separate issue. They're bringing these people into the country anyways, so if they're going to be brought into the country, we might as well vaccinate them and make sure they don't spread it here or take it back, or again, go around the Olympic Village and then you get the Olympic strain of the coronavirus. We already knew a long time ago there were not going to be any people coming into the country to view the Olympics. There were not going to be any foreign spectators. So it will only be domestic, but how are they going to do it? Because they do have soccer games, they do have baseball games here, and what they're doing is just I think it's 25% capacity is what they're allowed to do, and everyone has to sit far away from each other, which is fine. But if you want to go to the Olympics, you have to be a domestic resident. So I could go in that case, but you also have to have a negative test. They didn't say how recently, but you're going to have a negative PCR test to say that you don't have corona, or a vaccine certificate to be able to attend. Right now, as of this morning, I think it's 12 million people have been vaccinated, and that is out of 126 million people. So that's not only people in Tokyo, which is basically where you would have to, I guess I could travel to. I'm not going to travel to Tokyo just to watch the Olympics, but I guess I could. It's 4.65 million medical personnel, and 5.7 million people over 65 have gotten one shot. But you can see that number's pretty low. I didn't work out the percentage. I think that's now we're looking at 2, maybe getting close to 3% of the population. So 3% of the population they don't have a vaccination certificate, I think, if you haven't gotten both doses. There's actually that's something I would need to know. If you've gotten one shot, I don't think you're vaccinated, because you need the 2 shots to be fully vaccinated. Those people could go to the Olympics as spectators, but again, they're all over 65. I don't know. I guess Japan, those are the people who have the time. I actually probably still have to go to work, so I wouldn't have time to go to the Olympics to watch the Olympics. So the over 65 people, I guess, is a good target demographic if you want people to attend the Olympics. There is a secondary problem going on in that the doctors in charge of the Olympics are starting to withdraw. It's said 10,000 people have already withdrawn, like the doctors, the medical staff and stuff. And they're trying to find more people to cover all the events, but that seems to be one of the biggest issues, is just doctors don't support this. So when doctors don't support it, and you're talking about like sports where people are trying their absolute best, so they're very likely to get injured, you need doctors. So that's a whole separate issue. The Olympics is going to happen. It is going to have spectators as a possibility. I still have so many questions about whether or not it's going to be successful, I guess, is what it comes down to. So in the previous story, we talked about how few people have been vaccinated. And there is sort of a weird irony that Japan is already talking about sending vaccines to Taiwan. I talked about this last week. Japan's going to send doses to Taiwan. And now, this week, they started talking about sending doses to Vietnam, which is a very interesting way of looking at the world, because, yeah, they're helping out other people get vaccines, but I'm like, they haven't vaccinated everyone in Japan. But they have secured enough doses for Japan. So any doses beyond that, they don't technically need. The problem is the doses they haven't organized themselves well enough to actually send them or get the people vaccinated. Like, I haven't even heard about my age group, the possibility of us being vaccinated yet. I think it was the end of July, maybe July 8th was their target, and then they're going to start vaccinating like more people, like opening it up to people who are like more people than just over 65s. But again, that's still theoretical, but they're already supporting Taiwan. I made it an interesting connection. I don't know if this is real. I think it is. Of course I think it is, because I think it. Therefore, I think it is. So Japan has promised, and already, I believe, sent 1.24 million doses of vaccine to Taiwan. And they said thank you. And actually, I didn't know this, that the Minister of Health in Taiwan actually requested it, because they're saying China has been impeding shipments to Taiwan, which is a weird kind of punishment, I guess, for just being from Taiwan. But then China immediately starts complaining that Japan is like helping by sending doses that they're not sending to Taiwan. You can see that the sort of circular logic is problematic. I think China's making a mistake, because by impeding doses to Taiwan, so right now there's contention between, well, there has been for a long time, contention between Taiwan and China mainland government-wise. So you don't fix that. I've actually kind of said this before, usually talking about American politics. You don't fix the relationship between two countries by punishing, or between two groups by punishing one of the groups. So by impeding the shipment of vaccines to Taiwan and therefore making the health of those people better, when they start going to other countries, in this case Taiwan, looking towards Japan to say, like, please send us vaccines, that's when you've lost some power. So if China had come into Taiwan and actually been like, here's 1 billion vaccines, we're saving you, the relationship between Taiwan and China would improve. But because China's trying to be hard and tough and say, like, we're not going to give it to you, you can't get it from anyone, and then Taiwan turns around and goes, well, our buddy over here, Japan's sending us some. And then China's like, no, you can't do that. Well, they can, and they have. And so now the relationship between China and Taiwan and Japan is stronger, and China's missing out. They missed an opportunity to be generous and kind and helpful. But then I thought, maybe there's another agenda here. And the secondary agenda is that the health crisis already has, hurt the semiconductor manufacturing sector. So Taiwan produces the most, basically, chips and semiconductors in the world. Japan is a country very full of semiconductors and chips. So, I mean, there's chips in my fridge and the phone that I'm using right now to record this, and laptops and stuff. Just recently, so in the last couple of days, the Minister of Trade came out and said Japan increasing its semiconductor growth, like basically making semiconductor factories, is now going to be a national project, is how he put it. And this is where I saw the connection between Japan and Taiwan and vaccines and being kind to each other, and how that's going to pay off in the future, is that creating factories in Japan is going to be a joint venture, and it said overseas. Now, the thing is, the only people overseas who have that manufacturing capability is Taiwan. So you want to make sure you have a good relationship to Taiwan, so you have the ability to get their information on how they make so many chips and stuff, get access to their factories so you can actually copper their factories domestically. And there you go. So you give vaccines to Taiwan. Taiwan gives you the technological ability to build factories to create chips. And now Japan can become the semiconductor center of the world. Taiwan and Japan working together, that's going to be great for manufacturing and chips and stuff. And China loses out. And that's what I'm saying, is China, instead of taking this hard line attitude, be nice to Taiwan, build that relationship. It's actually referred to as soft power. It'll work out for you in the future. Japan has put significant efforts into banning plastics. It hasn't been successful yet. They've banned stores, Basically, if you go to convenience stores, you don't get a plastic bag anymore. You can ask for one, but you got to pay for it, which again, I'm okay with. I don't usually take it. I just put the items in my actual knapsack or whatever I'm carrying with me. The next step, the next stage is going to be banning plastic cutlery. So you're going to have the companies are like, so it's going to be mostly convenience stores who usually give you plastic forks and stuff with the food you buy from them. Oh, they're going to have to charge for the plastic cutlery, switch to biodegradable, or then try to get customers to bring their own. Just like customers right now, a lot of them bring their own bag. They bring a bag that doesn't have a reusable bag. If you don't, and this is where a bit that I found interesting, is if you provide plastic cutlery free of charge, you can get fined of up to 500,000 yen. Now that, for a company, let's say 7-Eleven, 500,000 yen is nothing. But that would be per instance. So if they gave out 500, I should do something, it was very easy math. If they gave out 1,000 plastic forks, which probably one location could do that in a day, that's 1,000 times 500,000. So now you're up into the millions and billions of yen. This is going to start from next April. In 2019, these are just some stats because I do love my stats. Japan produced 8.5 million tons of plastic waste. And they're trying to basically reduce that any way they can. And by 2030, they also intend to double plastic recycling. So those are some of the benchmarks and goals set by Japan for itself. Right now, again, most recycling in almost every country doesn't actually happen the way people think it happens, which is too bad. This was interesting to me because this follows within the realm of my business world, an English teacher. And the English teaching community is actually surprisingly small. So there's actually a very good chance that someone I know knows this person, like the 6 degrees of separation. An American English teacher has been arrested for smuggling cannabis oil. Which I don't know if that's the CBD oil. I actually forget which one it is. I got a vial of that from an online place in Japan. So it was legal in Japan. I didn't want to get in trouble for something as small as like this. And it's supposed to be like a roll-on for your muscles. I think it's so weak it does nothing. It smells nice. It's sort of pepperminty, but there was no actual benefit because it was so weak. Because Japan, the oils and stuff, cannabis is so controlled. It's basically just illegal. That the amount would have to be so weak, I think it was pointless but it was a good experiment. Basically, I know it doesn't work. He's 43 years old though. And in my head, I was like, it must be a kid who doesn't know better. Like a 20-year-old. But 43, you cannot say he's not responsible for his own actions. He had it sent to a hotel, like his box sent to a hotel in Ibaraki, and in the box was hair products. And those hair products actually contained 2 kilograms of the oil, the cannabis oil. I guess he thought sending it to a hotel would make it harder for it to trace back to him, but he's got to pick it up. And so they know what's in the box. Like they've probably had a dog sniff it already, x-rayed it, and been like, ooh, this is suspicious. Let's open it up and look at it, because that's what customs is allowed to do. So they probably knew that going in. They had let it go to the hotel, and whoever picks it up, they arrest. I've actually heard about that story kind of before. So they let it go to the end person, and they arrest that person for smuggling. 2 kilograms of cannabis oil apparently is worth 80 million yen. So this was a significant value to the young man. Then, of course, they searched his house. And in his house, they found 5 more kilograms of the cannabis oil worth 200 million yen. So I started thinking, well, the math doesn't work out. That 2 kilograms is worth 80, but 5 kilograms is worth 200. And then I was like, it's pretty close. Maybe one's purer than the other. I didn't really think about it too deeply because I actually wrote, why is it more valuable? But I guess just I hadn't done the math properly. Right now, he's still just being accused of smuggling because they actually haven't proved it yet, but it was sent to him in the hotel, and then he picked it up, and then it was sent, they went to his house, and they found more. So it's pretty clear. He could claim personal use, but you have to explain how you're going to use 7 kilograms of oil. That would be tough to explain. So we'll see what happens. I'm actually interested, again, in the punishment. Is he going to be arrested and put in Japanese prison? Probably not. I bet he just gets deported and then they just don't let him back. which is getting off pretty easy. But then he probably has to explain to the people who he's getting that oil from what happened to the oil. I guess I got arrested is a pretty simple explanation, but he's on the hook for the money and he doesn't make any profits. So I don't know how much he paid, like at cost, because they were talking value. I assume they mean street value. The actual cost of payment. Drugs seem to be the sort of thing you pay for in advance. So he's lost money. Even if he just gets sent home, whatever money he staked on this, he's lost. That money is gone. Cops. The last two stories are about cops committing crimes. I'm always like, it's weird to me that cops get caught committing crimes. You think that because they would know how the police work, they would be better at not getting caught committing crimes. A 22-year-old cop. So again, youth doesn't make it acceptable, but I'm like, I don't know. He's a cop. He should know. This was actually pretty smart, though, crime-wise. He stole luxury and watches and rings to the equivalent of about 10 million yen, so value. And he did it, he broke into a house. So he was breaking and entering. I was like, wow, that seems like a really dumb crime to get caught and arrested for. And then why did he pick this house? Well, it turns out he had actually visited that house 2 years prior as part of an investigation. So he basically went into his house, this guy's house, because he was investigating some other crime. He basically scoped out the place in advance. So he went there and he's like, hey, this guy's got a lot of nice stuff lying around. Oh, let's see where I think he's keeping his luxury valuables. And then came back 2 years later, which is a pretty sensible amount of time, because you wouldn't connect that someone was here 2 years ago and someone broke into my house last night. Gotta give him some credit for doing this properly, but he got caught, he got arrested, so no sympathy there. The reason he claims he committed the crime, he stole the watch and the rings and whatnot, and was because he was in debt for 2 million yen for a car. Now my car is pretty crap standard car. It's a Nissan Cube. It's a very ugly car, but very functional. It cost 2 million yen. So if he's 2 million yen in debt, is that for the entire car? Or did he buy a car well beyond his means and he's still paying it off? And that's the thing I bet, because this guy doesn't make good decisions. He's decided the way to pay off his debt is to break into someone's house. That's not a good decision. So I bet he bought himself like a Mercedes he couldn't afford. He was millions of yen in debt and needed to start paying it off. So he decided to go break into this guy's house who he knew had money because he'd been in his house 2 years ago. I'm hoping he gets the full brunt of the law, but actually what I've seen is cops get off pretty easy overall. And it's a police chief. And it was more the punishment that they decided to go with, is that what I was interested in. The police chief gets drunk and he's out and he goes to a shopping mall. And from the shopping mall toilet, actually they didn't clarify that. He stole 5 rolls of toilet paper, and they said the equivalent value was 170 yen from the shopping mall. So they didn't actually clarify, did he steal rolls of toilet paper from the toilet, or did he actually go to the toilet roll section and just pick it? I guess 5, it doesn't come in packs of 5. It would come in packs of 6 to make it, an even size. So he must have stolen individual rolls. And 170 yen is very cheap toilet paper. So I bet that's the toilet paper they actually put in the toilets. So then he was caught. And this guy's 60. And is the standard excuse, it was stress or whatever. And it caused him to just freak out. And he stole the toilet paper, which I don't buy any of that. He wasn't arrested for theft. He was given 1 month pay cut. So if you remember last week's story about the cops who were banging in the break room, it was a 3-month pay cut. But in that case, there wasn't actually a crime so much. In this case, there is an actual crime. It's theft. And he wasn't arrested for theft, even if it's a very small amount, 170 yen. Maybe the shopping mall didn't want to press charges. But he did do something wrong. So he was given 1 month pay cut, and then he decided to resign. Resigning over 170 yen loss is pretty sad. And there's not really any way to get around it. I don't feel bad for him though, because that was a really dumb thing to steal. So I guess what I'm saying, if you're going to steal something, you at least want to make it worthwhile. Because if you're going to lose your job over it, you want it to be worthwhile. The secondary question is, did he actually even get to use the toilet paper? Because I bet he didn't, because I think he got caught on the way out. So that just, again, bad decision, sucks all around. Probably because he was a police chief, he thought he could get away with it. But it just proves that police are just people too, and they make really bad decisions, just like I do. Maybe that's why I try to give them advice. It's because I feel some sympathy in that I have made some really bad decisions in my life as well.
You can tweet questions or comments at Ninja News Japan or join the Facebook group. On Facebook, search for Ninja News Japan. Sexy out homies.